William's hands trembled slightly as he fumbled with the apartment keys, the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing down on his shoulders after another grueling 14-hour shift at the construction site. The hallway lights flickered overhead, casting dancing shadows on the peeling wallpaper that had seen better days. He could hear Kate's voice through the thin door of apartment 4B, though he couldn't make out the words. After 3 years of marriage, he knew that particular tone meant she was either talking to her sister or trying to calm down their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. The key finally turned in the lock, and William stepped inside their modest 2-bedroom apartment. The smell of leftover Chinese takeout lingered in the air, mixed with the faint scent of Kate's vanilla candles that she lit every evening to mask the mustiness that seemed permanently embedded in the old building's walls. He kicked off his work, boots, leaving them by the door as Kate had asked him to do countless times before. Kate's voice was coming from the spare bedroom they had converted into a small office space. William loosened his tie and walked quietly down the short hallway, planning to surprise her with a gentle kiss on the forehead before heading to the shower. The door was slightly ajar, and as he approached, he could hear her speaking in hushed, gentle tones. "I know it's scary, sweetheart, but remember what we talked about yesterday? You're so much braver than you think you are." William paused, confused. Kate wasn't on the phone. Her voice had that special quality she used when talking to children, soft and encouraging. But they didn't have any children, and none of their friends had kids young enough to need that kind of reassurance. Curiosity got the better of him, and he gently pushed the door open just enough to peer inside. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Kate was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her laptop open in front of her, but that wasn't what captured his attention. Arranged around her in a perfect circle were 6 children, all appearing to be between the ages of 8 and 12. They were sitting quietly, some with notebooks, others with what looked like homework assignments spread out on the carpet. The children's clothes were clean but clearly well worn, and several of them clutched small backpacks as if they contained everything precious to them. A young girl with pigtails and thick glasses raised her hand tentatively. Kate smiled warmly at her. "Yes, Maria?" "Mrs. Kate, I finished the math problems, but I'm still confused about the word problems. They use such big words." Kate scooted closer to the girl, her patience evident in every movement. "That's perfectly okay, honey. Word problems can be tricky because they're like little stories with math hiding inside them. Let's break it down together step by step." William watched, mesmerized as Kate worked with Maria, using simple explanations and encouraging words. The other children waited patiently, some helping each other quietly. There was a boy who couldn't have been more than 10 years old helping a younger girl with her reading, pointing to words and whispering pronunciations. "How did you all get here?" William wondered silently, noticing that it was nearly 8 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. Where were their parents? Why were they in his apartment, and how long had this been going on? Kate moved to another child, a boy with a serious expression who was struggling with what appeared to be a science worksheet. "Remember, Thomas, there's no such thing as a stupid question. If something doesn't make sense, we keep asking until it does." The boy nodded eagerly, his face lighting up as Kate explained the concept of photosynthesis, using the small potted plant on the windowsill as a visual aid. William could see the exact moment when understanding dawned on Thomas's face, and the pure joy that followed made William's chest tighten with emotion. A soft knock at the apartment's front door interrupted his observation. Kate looked up, glancing at the small clock on the desk. "Okay, everyone, that's probably Mrs. Rodriguez. Time to pack up your things." The children began gathering their materials with practiced efficiency, clearly familiar with this routine. They helped each other put papers in folders and zipped up backpacks. William quickly stepped back from the doorway, moving to the living room where he pretended to be sorting through mail. Kate emerged from the office, followed by the 6 children. She opened the front door to reveal a middle-aged Hispanic woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. "How did they do tonight, Kate?" the woman asked, speaking with a slight accent. "They're all making wonderful progress, Mrs. Rodriguez. Maria is really getting the hang of those word problems, and Thomas finally understood photosynthesis. They're all such bright kids." "You are a blessing," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her voice thick with gratitude. "I don't know how we can ever repay you." Kate shook her head firmly. "You don't need to repay anything. These kids deserve every opportunity to succeed, and if I can help even a little bit, then that's payment enough." William watched from the kitchen doorway as the children filed past Kate, each one giving her a hug goodbye. Little Maria lingered, looking up at Kate with adoring eyes. "Mrs. Kate, will you be here next Tuesday?" Kate knelt down to Maria's level. "I'll be here every Tuesday, sweetheart. You can count on it." After the door closed behind Mrs. Rodriguez and the children, Kate turned around and saw William standing there. Her face flushed slightly, caught in the act of something she had clearly been keeping secret. "How long have you been home?" she asked quietly. "Long enough," William replied, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Kate, what was that? Who were those? Kids?" Kate sat down heavily on their old couch, suddenly looking tired. She patted the cushion beside her, and William joined her, taking her hand in his. "They're from the apartment building 3 blocks over," she began slowly. "Mrs. Rodriguez manages the building, and most of these families are recent immigrants. The parents work multiple jobs, often until very late, and the kids were falling behind in school. They needed help with homework, but their parents don't always speak enough English to help them, and tutoring is expensive." William squeezed her hand gently, encouraging her to continue. "I started with just Maria about 2 months ago. Her mother works at the diner until 10 every night, and Maria was struggling with math. Then Thomas needed help with science, and word got around. Mrs. Rodriguez asked if I could help a few more kids, and I couldn't say no." The weight of what his wife had been doing settled over William like a warm blanket. While he had been coming, home exhausted and focused only on their own struggles, Kate had been quietly changing the lives of 6 children who needed someone to believe in them. William stared at Kate for a long moment, processing everything she had just told him. The apartment felt different now, charged with a significance he hadn't noticed before. He could see the small signs he had missed, the extra notebooks stacked. On the bookshelf, the children's pencils scattered on the coffee table, the way Kate had been buying more snacks lately, claiming she was craving variety. "Kate," he said slowly, "why didn't you tell me?" She looked down at their joined hands, her thumb tracing circles on his palm. "I wanted to, but I wasn't sure how you'd react. We've been talking about saving money for our own future. Maybe starting a family someday. And here I am spending our evenings and our resources on other people's children." William felt a sharp pang of guilt. It was true that money had been tight, and they had been discussing their future plans more frequently lately. His job at the construction site paid well enough, but Kate's part-time work at the local library barely covered her car payment and gas. They had been careful with every dollar, planning for the day when they might have children of their own. "How much has this been costing us?" he asked, trying to keep any judgment out of his voice. Kate's cheeks reddened. "I've been buying supplies. With my library money. Just basic things. Pencils, notebooks, sometimes snacks. Maybe $40 or $50 a month total. I know we agreed to save that money, but William, you should see how hungry some of these kids are when they arrive. Maria told me she sometimes doesn't eat lunch at school because her mom can't afford to put money on her lunch account." The image of the little girl with pigtails sitting hungry at school hit William like a physical blow. He remembered his own childhood, when his mother had worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. There had been plenty of nights when he had gone to bed with his stomach growling, doing homework by the light of a single lamp because they couldn't afford to heat the whole house. "I should have told you," Kate continued, her voice barely above. A whisper. "But I was afraid you might think it was too much, or that we couldn't afford it. I know you work so hard for our future, and I didn't want you to think I was being careless with our money." William lifted Kate's chin with his finger, making her look at him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, and he could see the weight of keeping this secret had been wearing on her. "Kate, do you remember what you said to me on our wedding day?" She smiled through her tears. "I said a lot of things. You'll have to be more specific." "You said that you wanted to build a life together where we could look back and be proud of how we spent our time on this earth. You said you wanted our love to make the world a little bit better, not just our own little corner of it." Kate's eyes widened as she remembered, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "What you're doing with those kids," William continued. "This is exactly what you meant, isn't it? This is who you are, Kate. This is why I fell in love with you." William pulled her into his arms, holding her close as she cried quietly against his shoulder. He thought about all the evenings he had come home to find her cheerful and energetic, despite what he now realized must have been exhausting tutoring sessions. She had been pouring herself into these children while still maintaining their household, still greeting him with smiles and asking about his day. "I want to meet them properly," he said into her hair. "Next Tuesday, I want to be here." Kate pulled back to look at him, searching his face. "Are you sure? It can get pretty chaotic. Thomas asks about a million questions, and Maria gets frustrated when she doesn't understand something right away. Sometimes they argue, and occasionally someone cries when the math gets too hard." William laughed, wiping a tear from Kate's cheek. Sounds like a typical Tuesday night with the Williams family. The following Tuesday, William made sure to leave work early. He stopped by the grocery store and bought juice boxes, granola bars, and a variety of fruits. Kate had protested when she saw the bags, insisting it was too much, but William had waved away her concerns. "If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right," he had said. When Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with the 6 children, William was waiting in the living room, freshly showered and wearing his most approachable smile. The children clustered behind Mrs. Rodriguez, suddenly shy in the presence of a new adult. Kate made the introductions. "Everyone, this is my husband, William. William, these are my students, Maria, Thomas, Sophia, Diego, Carmen, and little Alex." Alex, who couldn't have been more than 8 years old, peeked out from behind Thomas. His big brown eyes took in William's size and serious expression with obvious wariness. "Are you going to help us with homework too?" Thomas asked boldly, adjusting his glasses. "If you'll let me," William replied. "Though I have to warn you, I'm probably not as good a teacher as Mrs. Kate." "That's okay," Maria said generously. "We can teach you." As the children settled into their usual circle in the office, William found himself assigned to help Diego with his reading. Diego was 10 years old and struggling with English as his second language. His reading level was below grade level, and William could see the boy's frustration mounting as he stumbled over words. "This is stupid," Diego muttered after mispronouncing the same word 3 times in a row. "I'm never going to get it." William remembered his own struggles in school, the shame of being called on to read aloud when he hadn't quite mastered all the sounds letters made. His father had been impatient with his academic struggles, often telling him to just try harder, without offering actual help. "Diego, can I tell you something?" William said, setting down the book. "When I was your age, I couldn't read very well either. In fact, I was probably worse at it than you are." Diego looked skeptical. "Really? Really? And you know what the problem was? Nobody ever told me that learning to read in English is like learning to play a musical instrument. You don't expect to sit down at a piano and immediately play a beautiful song, right? You have to practice, one note at a time." William picked up the book again. "So let's not worry about reading the whole page perfectly. Let's just focus on one word at a time, and if we don't know a word, we'll sound it out together. No pressure, no rush. Just you and me figuring it out as a team." Something in William's tone must have reassured Diego. because the boy nodded and picked up the book again. They worked slowly through the passage, with William providing gentle guidance and plenty of encouragement. When Diego successfully read a particularly difficult sentence, William gave him a quiet high five. "See? You're getting stronger already." By the end of the evening, William understood why Kate had been keeping this secret and why she had been willing to sacrifice to make it happen. The joy on these children's faces when they finally grasped a concept was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The trust they showed by asking questions and admitting when they didn't understand something was both humbling and inspiring. As Mrs. Rodriguez gathered the children to leave, little Alex tugged on William's sleeve. "Mr. William, will you be here next week too?" William looked down at the boy's hopeful face, then over at Kate, who was beaming at him with pride and love. "I'll be here every week that I can, Alex. You can count on it." 3 weeks had passed since William joined Kate's impromptu tutoring sessions, and their small apartment had transformed into something neither of them had expected, a second home for 6 children who had begun to flourish under their care. William found himself looking forward to Tuesday evenings with an anticipation that surprised him. The construction site, which had once been his primary focus, now felt like something he endured to get to the part of his week that truly mattered. On this particular Tuesday, however, something was different. Maria arrived with red, puffy eyes and wouldn't meet Kate's gaze when she usually ran straight into her arms. Thomas, normally the first to share stories about his week, sat quietly in the corner with his books clutched against his chest. Even little Alex, who had taken to greeting William with enthusiastic hugs, simply nodded and found a spot on the floor without his usual chatter. Kate and William exchanged concerned glances as Mrs. Rodriguez lingered at the door instead of her usual quick goodbye. "Is everything all right?" Kate asked gently. Mrs. Rodriguez's face was etched with worry lines that seemed deeper than usual. She glanced at the children, then back at Kate and William. "Could I speak with you both privately for a moment?" Kate led Mrs. Rodriguez to the kitchen while William stayed with the children, who were unusually quiet as they unpacked their homework. Something was clearly weighing heavily on all of them. "Children," William said softly, sitting down on the floor among them. "Before we start with homework tonight, does anyone want to talk about what's bothering you?" Sophia, who was usually shy, looked up with tears in her eyes. "Mr. William, are we in trouble? Did we do something wrong?" William's heart clenched. "No, sweetheart. None of you are in trouble. Why would you think that?" "Because Mama was crying when she got home from work yesterday," Diego said quietly. "And she was on the phone talking really fast in Spanish, and I heard her say our building number." Thomas adjusted his glasses nervously. "My mom was crying too. She kept saying something about 30 days and having to find somewhere else to go." The pieces began falling into place for William, and he felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He could hear Kate and Mrs. Rodriguez speaking in hushed, urgent tones in the kitchen, and he suspected they were discussing the same thing the children were worried about. "Listen to me, all of you," William said, making sure he had each child's attention. "Whatever is happening, Mrs. Kate and I are going to figure it out together. You are not alone in this, and you don't need to be afraid. Sometimes grown-ups have to deal with complicated problems, but that doesn't mean anything bad is going to happen to you." Little Alex scooted closer to William. "But what if we have to move far away? What if we can't come here for homework time anymore?" Before William could answer, Kate and Mrs. Rodriguez returned from the kitchen. Kate's face was pale, and Mrs. Rodriguez looked as though she might cry at any moment. Kate knelt down among the children. "Mrs. Rodriguez has something she needs to tell all of us." Mrs. Rodriguez took a shaky breath. "My dear children, you know that I manage your apartment building, and I work very hard to make sure all your families have a safe, clean place to live." The children nodded. their young faces serious and attentive. "Well, sometimes things happen that are out of my control. The company that owns our building has decided to sell it to people who want to tear it down and build something new. This means that all of our families need to find new places to live." Maria's hand shot up as if she were in school. "But where will we go?" "There aren't any other apartments we can afford nearby." Mrs. Rodriguez's voice cracked slightly. "That's the problem, mi amor. The new apartments in this area cost much more money than our families can pay. Most of us will have to move to different neighborhoods, maybe even different towns." The silence that followed was deafening. William watched as the reality sank in for each child. Thomas was the first to speak. "Does this mean we won't be able to come here for homework help anymore?" Kate reached out and took Thomas's hand. "We don't know yet what's going to happen, but I want you all to know that Mrs. Rodriguez and your parents are working very hard to find solutions, and William and I are going to do everything we can to help." "How much time do we have?" William asked Mrs. Rodriguez. 30 days from yesterday. The new owners want everyone out so they can start demolition." William did quick math in his head. 30 days to find affordable housing for 6 families in a city where rents had been steadily climbing. 30 days for children to potentially lose not just their homes, but their school district, their friends, and the stability they had been building. That night, after the children had gone home with heavy hearts and half-completed homework assignments, Kate and William sat at their kitchen table with a legal pad trying to figure out how they could help. "What if we could find them apartments in our neighborhood?" Kate suggested. "It's not that much more expensive than where they are now." William had already been researching rental listings on his phone. "I've looked at everything within 5 miles. The cheapest 2-bedroom apartment I can find is $800 more per month than what these families are paying now. That might as well be $8,000 more for most of them." Kate slumped in her chair. "There has to be something we can do. We can't just watch these kids get scattered across the city and lose everything they've been working toward." William stared at the numbers he had written on the legal pad. 6 families, each needing help with deposits, moving costs, and potentially higher monthly rents. Even if they emptied their savings account, they could maybe help 1 family, and that would leave them financially vulnerable. "What if we think about this differently?" William said slowly, an idea beginning to form. "What if instead of trying to help them find new apartments, we found a way for them to stay together as a group?" Kate looked up from her own research. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if there was a way to rent a house big enough for multiple families to share? Something where they could split the costs and stay in the same school district?" Kate's eyes lit up. "Like an intentional community? Families choosing to live together to make it more affordable?" William nodded, feeling more hopeful than he had all evening. "Exactly. And if they're living together, then we could continue the tutoring program there, maybe even expand it." They spent the next 2 hours searching online for rental properties, looking for houses or duplexes that might work for multiple families. The more they searched, the more excited they became about the possibilities. "Look at this one," Kate said, turning her laptop toward William. "It's a big old house about 15 minutes from here. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a huge basement, and a rent that would be totally manageable if split between 3 or 4 families." William studied the listing. The house was old and would probably need some work, but it was in a good school district and had a large yard where children could play safely. "There's only one problem," he said. "The landlord would have to be willing to rent to multiple families, and most landlords prefer dealing with just one lease." Kate was quiet for a moment, then looked up at William with a determined expression he recognized. It was the same look she had worn when she decided to start tutoring Maria, the same look that meant she was about to suggest something that would change their lives. "What if we were the primary renters?" she said. "What if we rented the house and then sublet rooms to the families who need them? We could be the ones responsible to the landlord, and the families could pay us their share." William felt his pulse quicken. What Kate was suggesting would mean giving up their current apartment, taking on a massive financial responsibility, and essentially becoming landlords to families they barely knew. It would also mean taking the biggest leap of faith of their lives. "Kate," he said quietly, "if we do this, there's no going back. We'd be responsible for everything. If someone can't make rent, if something breaks, if there are problems between the families." Kate reached across the table and took his hands. "I know. But William, what's the alternative? We watch these kids lose everything they've been working for. We let Maria and Thomas and little Alex get scattered across the city and hope they find other people who believe in them." William looked into his wife's eyes and saw the same thing he had seen the night he first discovered her tutoring the children. Pure, unwavering love in action. He thought about Diego's pride when he successfully read a difficult passage, about Alex's laughter when he finally understood a math concept, about Maria's dreams of becoming a teacher someday. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." The next morning, William called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. He and Kate had barely slept, their minds racing with plans, concerns, and the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. By 8 a.m., they were sitting in Kate's car outside the large Victorian house they had found online, waiting for the property manager to arrive. The house looked even more imposing in person than it had in the photos. 3 stories of weathered blue paint and white trim, with a wraparound porch that had seen better days but still held promise. The yard was overgrown but spacious, and William could already envision children playing safely within its borders. "Second thoughts?" Kate asked, noticing William's quiet contemplation. "About 1 million of them," he admitted, "but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it." The property manager, a brisk woman in her 50s named Linda Chen, arrived precisely at 8:15. She sized up William and Kate with the practiced eye of someone who had shown hundreds of properties to potential renters. "You're looking for a family home?" she asked as she unlocked the front door. "Something like that," Kate replied carefully. They had decided not to mention their plans for multiple families until they could see if the property would even work for their needs. The moment they stepped inside, William felt a sense of possibility that surprised him. The house was old but solid, with high ceilings and large windows that filled the rooms with natural light. The hardwood floors creaked underfoot, but appeared to be in good condition beneath years of accumulated dust and neglect. "The house has been empty for about 6 months," Linda explained as she led them through the main floor. "The previous tenants were a large family with several generations living together. The owner is looking for responsible tenants who can appreciate the space and take good care of it." Kate and William exchanged a look. Several generations living together. That was exactly what they were hoping to create, in a way. The kitchen was enormous, with 2 refrigerators and enough counter space to accommodate multiple families preparing meals. The living room was large enough to serve as both a community gathering space and a study area for homework sessions. Upstairs, the 4 bedrooms were generously sized, and the basement had been partially finished, creating additional living space. "The rent is $1,500 a month," Linda said as they completed the tour. "First month, last month, and security deposit required up front. The owner prefers a 1-year lease minimum." William did rapid calculations in his head. Split 4 ways, the rent would be less than $400 per family per month, significantly cheaper than even the most basic apartments in the area. The upfront costs would be substantial but manageable if they pooled resources. "We're very interested," Kate said, "but we should be upfront about our situation. We're hoping to share this space with several other families, friends of ours who are facing housing challenges." William held his breath, waiting for Linda to shake her head and end their dreams before they could properly begin. Instead, Linda smiled. "Are you talking about intentional community living? That's becoming much more common these days, especially with housing costs the way they are." "Exactly," William said, feeling a surge of hope. Multiple families sharing resources and responsibilities. Linda nodded thoughtfully. The owner actually mentioned that he'd be open to that kind of arrangement, as long as everyone on the lease is financially qualified and the property is well maintained. He grew up in a household with multiple families and understands how well it can work. By the time they left the property an hour later, William and Kate had filled out rental applications and scheduled a follow-up meeting for the next day. Linda had given them a list of requirements: employment verification, credit checks, references, and proof of income for all adult tenants. "Now comes the hard part," Kate said as they sat in the car afterward. "Convincing 6 families to trust us enough to take this leap together." That evening, they called Mrs. Rodriguez and asked if she could arrange a meeting with all the families. Mrs. Rodriguez agreed to host the gathering at the community center in her apartment building the following night. William had never been more nervous about anything in his life. He and Kate spent hours preparing what they would say, trying to anticipate questions and concerns. They printed out photos of the house, created a budget breakdown showing how costs would be shared, and wrote up a basic plan for how the living arrangement might work. When they arrived at the community center, all 6 families were there, 12 adults and the 6 children William and Kate had come to love. The adults looked skeptical and worried, while the children seemed confused about why there was a formal meeting about their homework tutoring. Mrs. Rodriguez introduced William and Kate, explaining that they had asked for this meeting to discuss the housing crisis facing all the families. Kate stood up, her voice slightly shaky as she began. "We know that all of you are facing an impossible situation with only 3 weeks left to find new housing. William and I have been losing sleep thinking about how we might be able to help." She explained their idea, showing photos of the house and breaking down the costs. William watched the faces around the room, trying to gauge reactions. Some parents looked intrigued, others appeared overwhelmed, and a few seemed frankly skeptical that this young couple could solve their housing problems. Maria and Thomas's father, Carlos, raised his hand. "This is very generous of you to think of us. But why would you do this? What do you get out of taking on so much responsibility and risk?" It was the question William had been expecting, and the one that was hardest to answer without sounding either naive or condescending. "Honestly," William said, "we get to be part of something bigger than ourselves. For the past month, Tuesday evenings have become the best part of our week. Watching your children learn and grow, being trusted to help with their education, it's changed how we see our purpose in life." Kate nodded, taking over. "We're not trying to save anyone. These kids don't need saving. They need opportunity and stability. If we can provide some of that by sharing resources and creating a community together, then we all benefit." Sophia's mother, Elena, spoke up. "What happens if this doesn't work? What if there are problems between families, or someone can't pay their share of rent?" "Those are all valid concerns," William acknowledged. "We've thought about this a lot, and we think the key is clear communication and agreed-upon rules from the beginning. We'd need to establish guidelines about shared spaces, cleaning responsibilities, noise levels, guest policies, all of it." Thomas raised his hand as if he were in school. "Does this mean we'd all live in the same house? Like a really big family?" Kate smiled at him. "Something like that, Thomas. You'd still have your own bedroom and your family's private space, but you'd share some common areas with everyone else." "Would we still have homework time together?" Alex asked. "Every Tuesday," William promised. "And maybe more often, since we'd all be living together." The questions continued for over an hour. Parents asked about everything from bathroom schedules to what would happen if someone wanted to move out. The children, meanwhile, grew increasingly excited about the prospect of living together and having a big yard to play in. Finally, Mrs. Rodriguez called for quiet. "This is a big decision for everyone," she said. "Why don't we all take tonight to think about it, discuss it within our families, and meet again tomorrow evening? William and Kate, would you be willing to give us another day to consider?" "Of course," Kate said. And please ask us any questions you think of. Call, text, or email anytime. As families began to leave, Diego approached William shyly. Mr. William, if we all live together, does that mean you'll help me with reading more than just on Tuesdays? William knelt down to Diego's level. If your parents decide this is a good idea for your family, then yes. I'd love to help you with reading whenever you want to practice. Diego's face lit up with a smile that made all of William's concerns about the risk they were taking fade into the background. Walking to their car afterward, Kate took William's hand. Do you think they'll say yes? William looked back at the community center, where he could see several families still talking in. Small groups, their voices animated with possibility and concern. I think they're going to surprise us all, he said. 24 hours later, William and Kate sat in their car outside the community center, both too nervous to go inside. They were 15 minutes early for the meeting, but they could already see several families gathered in the parking lot, talking in animated clusters. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong, Kate admitted, gripping the steering wheel even though the car was parked. What if we're in over our heads? What if we can't actually make this work? William watched little Alex playing hopscotch on the sidewalk while his parents talked with Thomas's family. The boy's laughter carried through the evening air, a sound of pure joy that reminded William why they were doing this. Then we'll figure it out as we go, he said. The same way every family figures things out. When they finally entered the community center, the atmosphere felt different than it had the night before. Instead of the worried, skeptical energy of families facing crisis, there was something that felt almost like excitement. The children were clustered together, whispering and giggling, while the adults sat in a circle with notebooks and papers spread between them. Mrs. Rodriguez called the meeting to order, but before she could speak, Carlos stood up. William, Kate, we have all talked with our families and we have some questions, but first, we want you to know that we have also talked with each other, and we think this could work. Kate felt tears spring to her eyes immediately. William reached for her hand as Carlos continued. We have been neighbors for 3 years, but this housing crisis has made us realize we want to be more than just neighbors. We want to be a community. Elena stood up next, holding a folder thick with papers. We have made lists, she announced. Lists of rules we think we need, lists of how to share responsibilities, lists of what happens if there are problems. And we have ideas, Thomas called out, unable to contain his excitement. Like a garden where we can grow vegetables and a study room just for homework and maybe chickens. Chickens? William laughed, the tension in his chest beginning to ease. Thomas has been researching urban farming, his mother explained with an embarrassed smile. He's convinced that fresh eggs will improve everyone's brain power for studying. Over the next 2 hours, what had started as a tentative discussion transformed into detailed planning. The families had clearly spent the previous day thinking seriously about how to make communal living work. They had considered everything from household chores, rotating schedules, to quiet hours for studying, from shared meal planning to private space boundaries. Maria's mother, Rosa, had created a detailed budget showing how much each family could save by sharing utilities, bulk grocery shopping, and splitting household expenses. My daughter could have her own books instead of borrowing from the library all the time, she said quietly. We could save enough to maybe take a family trip someday. Sophia's father, Miguel, who worked as a maintenance supervisor, offered to handle minor repairs and upkeep for the house. I know how to fix most things, and it would save everyone money on maintenance costs. Diego's parents had researched the school district and discovered that the elementary school near the house had an excellent ESL program and after-school tutoring. Diego could get additional help with reading during the school day, his father explained, and the middle school has advanced math classes for kids like Thomas. As the evening progressed, William found himself amazed by how thoroughly these families had thought through the practical aspects of their potential living arrangement. They had anticipated challenges he and Kate hadn't even considered, and come up with solutions that made sense for everyone involved. "There is one thing we want to ask," Mrs. Rodriguez said as the formal planning began to wind down. "William and Kate, you have been so generous with your time, and now you want to take on this financial risk for all of us. What can we do to make sure this is fair for you too?" Kate and William exchanged glances. They had discussed this question extensively, knowing it would come up. "Honestly," Kate said, "we're not doing this to be generous. We're doing this because we've discovered something about ourselves over the past few months. We're happier when we're part of a community, when our lives have purpose beyond just ourselves." William nodded. "And practically speaking, this arrangement benefits us too. Our share of the housing costs will be lower than what we're paying now, and we'll be living in a much better space. Plus," Kate added with a grin, "I'll have built-in tutoring students, which means I get to keep doing work that I love." Little Alex raised his hand. "Mrs. Kate, if we all live together, can we have homework time more than just Tuesdays?" "We can have homework time whenever you need it, Alex." "What about game night?" Sophia asked. "Can we have family game night in the big living room? And movie nights," Carmen added, "with popcorn and everything?" As the children's excitement grew, their parents began to smile more broadly. William could see the exact moment when the adults stopped thinking about this as a housing crisis solution and started imagining it as an opportunity for something better than what they had before. By the end of the evening, all 6 families had committed to the plan. They had elected Mrs. Rodriguez as their unofficial house manager, responsible for coordinating between families and handling communications with William and Kate about any house-wide issues. They had agreed on a set of basic rules and a trial period of 6 months, after which anyone who wanted to leave could do so with 30 days' notice. Most importantly, they had chosen to trust each other. The following morning, William and Kate met with Linda Chen to finalize the rental application. With employment verification and references from all the adult tenants, plus a substantial security deposit cobbled together from everyone's savings, the application was approved within hours. "The owner is actually excited about this arrangement," Linda told them as they signed the lease. "He grew up in a multi-generational household in Taiwan and thinks American families have forgotten how much stronger they can be when they support each other." Move-in day was scheduled for the following Saturday, giving the families exactly 1 week to pack up their current apartments and prepare for their new life together. That Tuesday evening, their last homework session in William and Kate's small apartment. The mood was celebratory. The children could barely focus on their assignments, too excited about the upcoming move and all the possibilities it represented. "Mr. William," Thomas said during a break from his science homework, "do you think this will really work? All of us living together?" William looked around at the 6 children who had become such an important part of his life, then at Kate, who was patiently helping Alex with his reading while simultaneously brainstorming garden ideas with Maria. "You know what, Thomas? I think it's going to be better than any of us can imagine right now." As Mrs. Rodriguez gathered the children to leave that night, each one hugged William and Kate goodbye with unusual intensity. "See you at our new house," Maria called out as she walked to the door. "Our new house." William realized that somewhere, in the process of trying to help these families, they had all become something he had never expected. They had become his family, too. 6 months later, William stood in the kitchen of their shared home at 6 in the morning, making coffee in the quiet before the house came alive with the sounds of 8 families beginning their day. Through the window, he could see the garden that Thomas had convinced them all to plant, now flourishing with tomatoes, peppers, and herbs that found their way into shared meals throughout the week. The transformation had been remarkable, though, not without its challenges. The first month had tested everyone's patience as they learned to navigate shared bathrooms, negotiate refrigerator space, and establish rhythms for communal living. There had been disagreements about noise levels, conflicts over cleaning responsibilities, and more than one awkward conversation about personal boundaries. but they had worked through each issue as it arose, usually gathering in the living room, after the children were asleep, to talk through problems and find solutions together. William had discovered that the key to making their arrangement work wasn't avoiding conflict, but addressing it quickly and honestly before small irritations could grow into larger resentments. Kate emerged from their bedroom, already dressed, for her new job at the elementary school where several of their children were now enrolled. She had been hired as a reading specialist after the principal learned about her tutoring work and saw the progress Diego, Alex, and Sophia had made in their reading levels. "How are you feeling about today?" she asked, accepting the cup of coffee. William handed her. Today was the day they had all been working toward for months. The local newspaper was sending a reporter to write a story about their intentional community, and representatives from the City Housing Authority were coming to tour their home as part of a study on innovative approaches to affordable housing. "Nervous," William admitted. "What if we're not as successful as we think we are? What if the reporter focuses on the problems instead of the progress?" Kate smiled, the same calm confidence that had drawn William to her years ago still evident in her expression. "Then we'll tell them the truth, that we're 8 families who chose to support each other instead of struggling alone, and that it's made all of our lives better." The sound of children's voices began to drift down from upstairs as the house slowly awakened. Carmen was singing softly in Spanish while she got ready for school, and William could hear Alex asking his mother to help him find his favorite book for show and tell. By 7:30, the kitchen was bustling with breakfast preparation. Rosa and Elena had coordinated to make a large batch of breakfast burritos for anyone who wanted them, while Miguel prepared his famous Colombian coffee for the adults. The children gathered around the large dining table they had bought together, comparing homework assignments and making plans for after school. "Mrs. Kate," Maria said between bites of her burrito, "I finished reading the whole chapter book you gave me. Can I help tutor the younger kids today after school?" Maria had blossomed over the past 6 months, growing from a shy girl struggling with math into a confident student who now helped other children with their homework. She had recently tested into the accelerated reading program at school and had announced her intention to become a teacher like Kate. "Of course," Kate replied. "Thomas could probably use help with his English essay, and I know Alex would love to practice reading with you." Thomas looked up from his science textbook, where he was reviewing material for an upcoming test. "Actually, I think I understand the essay assignment now. But could you help me practice my presentation? I get nervous speaking in front of the class." William marveled at how naturally the children had begun supporting each other's learning. What had started as structured Tuesday tutoring sessions had evolved into an ongoing educational community where older children mentored younger ones and everyone celebrated each other's academic achievements. Sophia's mother, Elena, approached William with a clipboard. "The reporter will be here at 10 and the housing authority people are coming at 2. I've made a schedule so everyone knows when to be available for interviews." Elena had emerged as the house's unofficial coordinator, her natural organizational skills keeping everyone on track with shared responsibilities and special events. She had also started a small catering business from the house's large kitchen, with the other families acting as taste testers and occasional helpers during busy periods. As the morning routine continued, William reflected on how much their lives had changed. The financial stress that had once kept him awake at night had largely disappeared. Their share of the housing costs was significantly lower than their previous rent, and sharing utilities, groceries, and other expenses had freed up money for things that had once seemed impossible: a family vacation, new clothes for the children, books and educational supplies. But the financial benefits, while important, weren't what made the arrangement feel successful. It was the sense of purpose that came from being part of something larger than themselves, the joy of watching children thrive in an environment where they felt truly supported, and the deep satisfaction of proving that families could choose to take care of each other. At 10 o'clock sharp, reporter Jennifer Walsh arrived with a photographer in tow. William and Kate gave her a tour of the house, explaining how they had adapted the space for multiple families while still maintaining privacy and personal space. "What surprised you most about this living arrangement?" Jennifer asked, as they stood in the converted basement, which now served as a combination playroom and study space. Kate and William exchanged a look. They had discussed this question many times in preparation for the interview. "I think what surprised us most," Kate said, "was how quickly it stopped feeling like an experiment and started feeling like home. We expected there to be an adjustment period, but within a few weeks, it just felt natural." William nodded. "And the children adapted even faster than the adults. They went from being neighbors who saw each other occasionally to being like cousins who genuinely care about each other's success and happiness." Jennifer interviewed several of the families, asking about challenges, benefits, and their plans for the future. The children, initially shy around the reporter, gradually warmed up and began enthusiastically describing their favorite aspects of communal living. "We have the best study group ever," Thomas told Jennifer. "If I don't understand something, there's always someone who can help explain it differently until it makes sense." Alex, now reading at grade level after months of intensive support, showed off the library they had created in one corner of the living room. "Everyone contributes books, and we have reading time together every evening after dinner. Mr. William reads the chapter books out loud, and it's like having stories every night." When the Housing Authority representatives arrived in the afternoon, they came with clipboards full of questions about zoning regulations, occupancy limits, and legal liability issues. William had been dreading this part of the day, worried that bureaucratic concerns might overshadow the human success story they had created. But the lead representative, Dr. Sarah Martinez, seemed genuinely interested in understanding how their arrangement worked and whether it could be replicated as a model for addressing housing affordability challenges. "What we're seeing here," Dr. Martinez said after her tour and interviews, "is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need more of. You've created stable, affordable housing while building a support network that benefits everyone involved, especially the children." She explained that the Housing Authority was developing a pilot program to help other groups of families create similar arrangements, providing assistance with finding suitable properties, navigating zoning requirements, and establishing legal frameworks for shared housing. "Would you be willing to serve as mentors for other families who want to try this approach?" Dr. Martinez asked. William felt Kate's hand slip into his as they considered the question. When they had first discovered Kate tutoring children in their spare bedroom, neither of them could have imagined where that simple act of kindness would lead. "Yes," Kate said without hesitation. "We'd love to help other families discover what we've learned, that we're all stronger when we choose to support each other." That evening, after the reporter and officials had left, all 8 families gathered in the living room for their weekly house meeting. But instead of discussing logistics and problem-solving, they found themselves reflecting on how far they had come. Mrs. Rodriguez, now a permanent resident of the house after her apartment building had indeed been demolished, looked around at the assembled group. "6 months ago, we were all strangers facing an impossible situation. Tonight, we are a family that chose each other." As the meeting wound down and families began heading to their respective bedrooms, little Alex tugged on William's sleeve. "Mr. William, when people read about us in the newspaper, do you think other kids will want to live like we do?" William knelt down to Alex's level, this boy who had become like a nephew to him over the past months. "I think there are a lot of families out there who would love to have what we have here, Alex. Maybe our story will help them find their own way to create it." Later that night, as William and Kate prepared for bed in their room on the second floor, they could hear the gentle sounds of their extended family settling in for the evening. Sophia practicing piano in the basement, Carmen reading a bedtime story to her younger brother Thomas, and Diego discussing a science project they were working on together. "Do you ever miss our old apartment?" Kate asked as she turned off the bedside lamp. William considered the question seriously. Their old life seemed so small in comparison to what they had now. Not just the physical space, but the richness of being part of a community that had chosen to care for each other. "I miss the simplicity sometimes," he said honestly. "But I wouldn't trade this for anything. What we have here, what we've built together, this is what home is supposed to feel like." Through their bedroom window, William could see the garden where Thomas's chickens now roamed freely, providing fresh eggs and endless entertainment for the children. Tomorrow, Maria would help him with a construction project in the backyard, building raised beds for an expanded vegetable garden. Diego would practice reading with Kate, while Alex worked on a math worksheet with Sophia's patient guidance. It was a life that had grown from a simple act of opening their door to children who needed help with homework. Now, 6 months later, they had opened their lives to something William was finally ready to name. They had become a family, not bound by blood or law, but by the choice to show up for each other every single day. As he drifted off to sleep, William could hear Kate's steady breathing beside him and the soft sounds of their chosen family all around them. It was the sound of home,